Welcome everyone to Canadian Yorker here, and we are back with another live stream on YouTube. For today, I'm coming back and I'm giving you guys a brief update. I wanted to continue a discussion on the news surrounding the 2030 World Cup, and I know said I was going to do it on Tuesday or Monday earlier this week, and it's now Thursday, so it's been pretty busy over the past couple of days. I apologize for the late uh, for the late live stream. I know I've been trying to keep on top of things, but life gets in the way, and what else can you do? Um, it's just what happens, everyone. So that's just part of life. So I'm coming to you here. I'm picking up from where I stopped last time, and where I was talking about the situation in Morocco and the protests occurring there. Um, so we're picking up from where we stopped off at last time. And in my last live stream, we covered the situation. Um, we covered the situation with our Morocco. So I'm just trying to pick up my last article where I stopped at, and that was at, I'm just trying to find it right here. That was readers. Yeah, so we stopped right here on September 4th, 2025 article. Morocco set up judicial committees for stadiums to deal with. So we're just going to kind of pick up from here, and we're going to pick up from here where we talk about the situation here. So it says Morocco was set up judicial committees in stadiums for the 2030 World Cup. So Morocco is planning to set up judicial committees in stadiums to swiftly handle potential offenses by fans when the 2030 FIFA World Cup. It will co-host with Spain and Portugal. Justice Minister Abdel Uhabi said. Um, so it says the move is among various judicial reforms taking place ahead of the tournament to prevent courts from being overwhelmed by minor cases. So, and we covered in this article that the justice minister is going to basically they're building a section within the stadium where they can handle court cases, you know, for minor offenses in the stadium. Justice Wahhabi told voters that quote unquote committees preside over by prosecutors working with judicial and security forces inside stadiums will ensure swift handling of incidents while respecting due process. He said in written responses to questions. Continuing, Morocco expects the event to boost with visitor arrivals to 26 million in 2030, up from 17.4 million in 2024. To shape its legal strategy, Morocco is examining previous sporting events, including recent Olympic Games and past World Cups. The Justice Minister added, Morocco will sign a judicial cooperation agreement with Spain and Portugal to speed up any potential extraditions or case transfers and to provide mutual legal assistance. Wahhabi said it is currently revising family and penal codes and introducing alternative penalties such as electronic bracelets to reduce prisoner overcrowding, which is partly driven by higher rates of pretrial detention. Concerning alcohol consumption in fan zones, Wahhabi said Morocco has always been able to balance its cultural traditions and with openness and international expectations. While alcohol is available in predominantly Muslim Morocco, public drinking is banned. So we can see continuing here that they're going to be dealing with people drinking in Morocco, and of course that's something that is a Muslim majority country. They do not permit public drinking. They don't have anyone drinking publicly in the country. It's not allowed, and that's against their laws and religions to do that. So they have to accommodate people who are from other countries who are not Moroccan and not Muslim to in order for that to be allowed. in certain areas, but not allowed everywhere. Um, so we went over this article from routers. They're going to be building, they're building the stadiums. They're having the justice systems inside stadiums so they can be able to handle whatever problems they have to deal with. But in spite of that fact, people are protesting against the situation occurring currently with the poor healthcare system that their own people are suffering from, which they really want to change. And the government is spending money on on building stadiums rather than improving its healthcare services, which is a very deal. It's a big concern for its citizens, for the younger citizens, obviously, and so that eventually you have to see changes occur. Um, that force the changes to happen. So continuing here, I didn't get to cover this, but September 25th. Morocco opens a new stadium constructed for the 2030 FIFA World Cup. They're still going forward with this. They don't want to see any. They don't want to have to work on it. They want to continue going forward with this. So Morocco opens new stadium construction for 2030 FIFA World Cup. The Kingdom of Morocco opened its new national stadium, the Prince Moulay Abdallah Stadium in Rabat on September 5th, an occasion marked by the national team defeating Niger in a CAF. The CAF is the African League in soccer in Africa. I can't exactly remember the name of it, but it's going to come up in this article. So this article is also taken from the Stadia magazine. That was September 25th, 2025. So I posted the link in this live stream for everybody to read. So continuing here, it says, designed by Populous, I believe that's the company. The 700,000 capacity Prince Moulay Abdallah Stadium features a unique parametrically designed LED facade. The design of the ball places a premium on acoustics and atmosphere to amplify the passion of Morocco's fans. It stands placed as close to the pitch as possible, amplifying crowd energy into a sonic wall. Under the direction of the National Agency for Public Facilities of Morocco, the stadium was designed in accordance with FIFA specifications to host matches up to the semifinals of the 2030 FIFA World Cup and incorporates state-of-the-art media and broadcast facilities, a 360 windshielding roof, expanded VVIP, VIP, and hospitality areas. The Prince Moulay Abdallah Stadium delivers a legacy impact of world-class amenities, accessibility improvements for local and international fans, enhanced fan experience, and increased revenues, says Populous Senior Principal Francois Clement, quote-unquote, leveraging our parametric design expertise across multiple Populous teams enables us to create our most ambitious stadium facade to date for this incredible stadium. So the facade of the stadium uses parametric design that draws inspiration from both the interlaced palm leaves lining Rabat's great boulevards and from Morocco's great artisanal tradition to point to fez embroidery and traditional ornamentation. Its golden shimmering profile rises from the eucalyptus forest of the city's green belt. The southern lungs of Rabat, representing Morocco's spirit of innovation and technological strength, as it opens towards the Atlantic, covering 100,000 meters. The facade has been created through parametric design. Is composed of 200,000 champagne-colored aluminum triangles, each with their own unique dimensions. At sunset, the stadium creates a spectacular light show as the facade glows with the help of 70-kilometer LED strips spiraling around the structure. The stadium ball is beating part of the Moulay Abdallah Stadium, designed to connect Moroccan supporters' immense passion with the action on the pitch. A vast open concourse to the south leads into a steep two-tiered to 23,000 capacity cop stand, one of the largest sand sections in Africa and Europe. The two superposed tiers, where the upper tier cantilevers 8 meters above the lower tier, create a breathtaking impression of floating over the field directly overlooking the goal. The dual-tiered South Cop serves as a loudspeaker for supporter passion, facing the pitch and players and the other stands. The West Stand hosts VIP skyboxes, and lounges centered on the Royal Box, while the East Stand offers a versatile mix of lounges and skyboxes over 3 tiers. Skyboxes on level 2 form a U-shaped ring around the pitch, offering optimized views both of the pitch and of the vibrant South Cop Stand. The overall design ensures an electrical stadium atmosphere, enhancing the fan experience at every level. The first foundations of the Prince Moulay Abdullah Stadium were laid in September 2023, leaving over only 24 months for a design and construction of a 68,700 seat stadium. This speed was made possible thanks to the adaptability and responsiveness of the populace as part of its integration into the Moroccan construction process led by the construction company Société Générale des Travaux du Maroc. The simultaneous coordination of design teams located across several populous offices ensures the safety of all information required for the completion of the Prince Moulay Abdullah Stadium within its 24-month design period. So, as you can see here, they built this beautiful stadium, this beautiful soccer stadium in Rabat, but they, it's in the description of it sounds really amazing, and it sounds like a really wonderful, great soccer stadium to go to when the 2030 FIFA World Cup happens, but they definitely have a serious problem on their hands with the healthcare system. Some of this money they could definitely invest some money into the healthcare system, which really needs to be upgraded at this point in time, because people have literally died from people are dying from their poor healthcare system. People who are their own people are dying. So reading here, Morocco spent about $500 million on this stadium, and this is quite mind blowing. So this has been set in place for some time. Since 2023, they have been working to build the stadium, and now the plans for the stadium are complete. They have to start putting money on investing into their own healthcare infrastructure. Actually, that remains to be seen, obviously. So we see here what we know about Morocco's 500 million FIFA 2030 World Cup stadium. And so this article was written on Construction Week Online on April 5th, 2024. So we hear, in this article, this was written last year. I actually wanted to cover this first, but basically we're just kind of jumping back and forth between the dates here. But this article, was written last year in April. So, oh man, can I read this? I would love to read this article, but I can't. So that's unfortunate. I have to become a subscriber in order to read it. I'm sorry, everybody, but you can definitely read up on this. So it's kind of unfortunate that in this day and age you have to become a subscriber in order to read certain news articles. And so I would love to read this article here, but I cannot get to it. Probably have to do that. But we know that Morocco spent $500 million on this World Cup stadium that they built. And, that is why, I'm just going to skip to the next article here. The young people in Morocco are protesting against this spending that the country is investing in then obviously they have a lot of pretty excited. Everybody must be excited that it's great that they're getting to host the World Cup, and it's a very important event, especially for people who love soccer. Moroccans love soccer. Moroccans also are pretty proud to be hosting FIFA, the 100th anniversary of FIFA. This is a monumental event, and they're doing it alongside with Spain and Portugal, Uruguay and Argentina, and this is just a great this is a great opportunity for Morocco to shine on the big stage. But at the same time, they're really dealing with a very serious crisis on their hands with their healthcare system. And obviously, if it matters, not only if it matters to them, it should also matter to the people who are going to be visiting, the tourists who are going to be coming from internationally from other countries to Morocco. And if somebody gets sick, if somebody gets hurt, somebody gets injured, the healthcare system is also going to probably fail the tourists, we don't know. I don't know. I've never been to Morocco myself, but looking from an outside perspective, from my perception, already seeing the news coming out this year about what's going on in Morocco, it should be a concern for me as if I was to visit Morocco as a tourist. Then I know if they can help me, as if I was to get hurt, if I was visiting for the first time, or for whatever reason, it's just something it's an optics situation. Morocco needs to really take care of the healthcare system, and that's why the young adults and the young people, are protesting on this spending being done by its own government. So, according to this NBCnews.com, in this article that was it was released September 25th. So these protests have been going on for some time, since March, May of this year. Young Moroccans clashed with police while protesting stadium spending and health system decline. The protest in the protest seven is that a typo? I can't even. I thought that's the number 17, but the largest protest. The person obviously made a typo in this article. Is that N or is that N, or is that number 17? I think that's an N. The largest protest in years. That's what the person is probably saying. In North African nation, drew a direct link between the country's struggling healthcare system and its investors in the lead up to the 2030 FIFA World Cup. And the writer of this article needs to make this correction to this, because the person made a typo, and whoever sees this needs to let that person know. So it says here, this is by the Associated Press. Youth-led demonstrators clashed with police and blocked the highway over the weekend in some of Morocco's largest anti-government protests in years, denouncing what they call the government's misplaced priorities. Hundreds of young Moroccans took to streets of at least 11 cities across the North African nation, denouncing corruption and blasting the government for pouring money into international sporting events while neglecting health and education. They drew a direct link between the country's struggling healthcare system and its investment in the lead up to the 2030 FIFA World Cup, shouting slogans, "Stadiums are here, but where are the hospitals?" Point taken. Very valid point. People are protesting that they have spent so much money in building stadiums, but they're neglecting their own healthcare system, which is a very serious thing. Continuing the article, Morocco is building at least 3 new stadiums and renovating or expanding at least half a dozen others, preparing to co-host the event. It will also host the Africa Cup of Nations later this year. Police in plainclothes and riot gear disrupted protests in several cities, including Rabat, Marrakech, and arrested demonstrators, including in Casablanca. An Associated Press reporter witnessed plainclothes police officers were seen arresting protesters as they gave interviews to the press. Videos published by the local outlets show Police on the ground and the Justice Ministry did not respond to the Associated Press questions about the arrest of a number of demonstrators. Since at least a decade ago, protests in Morocco have often centered on regional inequities and the government's priorities in Rabat. This weekend's nationwide rallies coalesced around popular anger seen earlier this year in isolated incidents throughout Morocco, including in areas still reeling from the deadly 2023 earthquake. Unrest swelled in most recently after 8 women died giving birth in a public hospital in Agadir, the largest coastal city 300 miles south of Rabat. The Moroccan Association for Human Rights said that more than 120 people were arrested over the weekend and transferred to a police stations, adding that the arrests confirmed the crackdowns on free voices and restrictions of right to freedom of expression. Unlike past protests driven by unions or political parties, these protests were publicized largely on social media platforms such as TikTok and Discord, popular among gamers and teenagers by a leaderless movement. Two groups named Gen Z 212 and Moroccan Youth Voices urged peaceful and civilized protests and responsible debate, even many of the supporters voiced more militant demands. Youssef, a 27-year-old engineer protesting in Casablanca, said, quote-unquote, "There is no hope. I not only want health and education reforms, I want a whole system reform. I want better salaries, better jobs, low prices, and a better life," he added, speaking on the condition of anonymity out of fear of facing arrest for attending an unauthorized protest. In Morocco, people born between 1995 and 2010 make up the largest share of the population, and the weekend demonstrations, referred to as the Gen Z protests, Morocco's youth have been drawing inspiration from Nepal, where youth-led protests have channeled widespread anger over the lack of opportunities, corruption, and nepotism. Moroccans this month have been demonstrating outside hospitals in several cities and rural towns to denounce the decline of public services. Officials have denied prioritizing World Cup spending over public infrastructure, saying problems facing the health sector were inherited. Earlier this month, Morocco's billionaire Prime Minister Aziz, I can't even say the man's name, Prime Minister Aziz Akinouch, I'm going to say that's his name, defended what he called the government's major accomplishments in the health sector. Prime Minister Akinouch said, quote-unquote, "We managed reforms, upgraded the spendings, and we are in the process of building hospitals in all the country's regions." Akinouch, who also in Agadir's mayor, said, "The Agadir hospital has been facing problems since 1962, and we are trying to resolve them." After protests, Moroccan Health Minister Amin Harouri fired the hospital director, as well as the health officials from the region. World Health Organization data from 2023 showed Morocco having only 7.7 medical professionals per 10,000 inhabitants, and far fewer in certain regions, including Agadir, with 4.4 per 10,000. The World Health Organization recommends 25 per 10,000. After the rallies, Gen Z 212, in a set on Facebook, posted is planning future protests. One demonstrator told an elderly man who tried to dissuade him, quote, warning him he could be arrested, said, quote unquote, "Protesting is the only way to win our rights." So, as you can see, Gen Z is protesting in Morocco because they want changes to the healthcare system. They want changes to happen, and they're fighting for their cause for their rights. And I've definitely covered that in my first article and in my first live stream, that people are definitely suffering from the lack of healthcare in their country. And according to this article here, the health minister definitely has said he's stepping up the plan to make sure changes are happening. But in the previous article, there was it was from the other side. There's not only the people that are in charge of the hospitals that are, they're just looking for scapegoats in a sense, and scapegoating people and firing them for not doing their jobs. But it's also people are getting away with certain things, and not being held accountable for what's happening. And the country is still reeling from the 2023 earthquake, and aid was not really sent to aid people in those areas. So the government hasn't really it's helped people, but didn't go so far to the extent as really extending its efforts to help people get out of the situation that happened in the 2023 earthquake occurred. So they have a lot of issues, obviously, going on, that they're dealing with, and also the country also still dealing with the healthcare system that in this article mentioned that they inherited from 1962. Now, I believe Morocco is still a young nation, and Morocco was colonized by the French in the past. So I can understand, obviously, that this country is still trying. It's going through the motions of adapting to and modernizing its healthcare system. And it's a slow progress, obviously. But it's so unfortunate that, as you can see, in the previous article, the first article I read, that 8 women died in childbirth in Morocco. Now, to have that happen is a terrible thing. It's very bad. It's even worse because there's been reports that children have died as well in 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 the healthcare system. So obviously there's a lot that they have to deal with. I'm kind of going into the Gen Z protests, that's occurring, and people are the younger people are definitely protesting, and that they want change to happen, and this is the big priority for them. Um, Obviously, the government is committed to investing money, and they definitely want to have the World Cup because it is an important event, obviously. But they have to they have to prioritize which is more important. Obviously, they're prioritizing having the World Cup over. It's a tricky situation, to be honest. But it should be a no-brainer. They should put money towards investing money and helping their country. It's definitely something that needs to be done. So, according to BBC.com, this article here, that's written 3 days ago, on October, this was October 9th, so this was October 6th, 2025. So it says, we need more hospitals than football stadiums, says Morocco's young protesters. So it says, Morocco is currently building what will be the globe's largest football stadium in preparation for co-hosting the 2030 World Cup. But for the demonstrators who have taken to the streets each night across the country since last Thursday, this 115,000 capacity showpiece and all other football infrastructure and development is costing a reported $5 billion, are an affront to an example of the government that has got its priorities wrong. No wonder people, young people, the Gen Z of their generation are protesting because the government is spending reported $5 billion to build stadiums, and that money could be going towards building, definitely helping their healthcare system. So according to Hajar Belassan, a 25-year-old communications manager from Satat, he said, quote unquote, I am protesting because I want my country to be better. I don't want to leave Morocco, and I don't want to resent my country for choosing to stay. A group called Gen Z 212, a number as a reference to the country's international dialing code, has been coordinating the demonstrations through the gaming and streaming platform Discord, as well as TikTok and Instagram. Apparently taking inspiration from Nepal's recent Gen Z protests, the young Moroccans want the authorities to act with the same urgency and passion when it comes to addressing these issues. as with hosting the world's premier sporting events. Starting on September 27th with protests across 10 cities, crowds have been building through the week, chanting slogans like "No World Cup, Health Comes First" and "We want hospitals, not football stadiums." The police have responded with seeming arbitrary mass arrests in certain places. Things have turned violent, leading to the deaths of 3 protesters. Prime Minister Aziz Akhannouch said on Thursday he was open to dialogue, but the leaderless movement has vowed to keep going until there is concrete change. A list of the demands have been shared on social media. They include free and quality education for all, accessible public health care for everyone, decent and affordable housing, better public transport, lower prices and subsidized basic goods, improved wages and pensions, provide job opportunities for youth and reduce unemployment, adopt English as a second language instead of French after Arabic. Anger has been growing, but what had galvanized the movement was the death over a number of days in mid-October of 8 women in the maternity ward of a hospital in southern city of Agadir. There were some reports that the deaths could have been prevented if there had been better care, proper equipment, and enough medical staff. In 2023, it was estimated that there were 7.8 doctors per 10,000 Moroccans, way below the World Health Organization recommendation of 23 per 10,000. Having read more about the protests on social media and inspired by a friend, Miss Belsan decided to join on Monday. The day before, the friend had been sending her videos from a demonstration in Casablanca that she was taking part in, and that Miss Belsan was immediately uploading them onto her social media accounts. Then her friend called her to say her brother had been arrested. He was not released until the early hours of the following morning. This, Miss Belsan says, is what pushed her to go out onto the streets. She says, quote, unquote, "We are making reasonable basic demands. Health and education are necessities that should already be prioritized." She tells BBC in a passionate voice, "It breaks my heart to see young, educated, and peaceful people faced with arbitrary arrests." When Miss Belsan went out and she noticed that the police were trying to stop people gathering and were making arrests, she says she was scared making eye contact with officers in case she attracted their attention. She said, quote unquote, "I was afraid for my safety," she says, but she still went out. On Wednesday, Interior Ministry spokesman Rachid El Khalifi said that 409 people had been detained up to that point. He also announced in a press release that 260 police officers and 20 protesters had been injured and 40 police vehicles and 20 police private cars were torched in violent clashes. 23-year-old Hakim was one of those arrested. He says he went onto the streets of Casablanca to protest peacefully, but ended up in a police cell with around 40 people. Hakim says, quote unquote, "This government has been abusing their power too much. My father had a stroke a little while ago. If we didn't have some savings to get him treated in a private hospital, he would have died. What am I gaining from a country that is not providing health care for my aging parents or educating me?" He describes, quote unquote, he describes the state-funded education system as being far behind what is available in the private sector. Hakim says, quote unquote, "We deserve a dignified life. We want to host the FIFA World Cup, but we also want to do that with our heads up high, not hiding or behind a facade." The police response has been heavily criticized by several Moroccan human rights organizations, protesters, and the opposition. Gen Z 212 protests are not the first time young Moroccans have taken to the streets. Many young commentators have been drawing parallels with the country's violent 1981 riots, where those who died became known as the bread martyrs, as they were protesting against the soaring prices of basic foods. The 2004 commission appointed by the king to investigate the country's past human rights abuses verified 114 deaths, but it did not disclose how they died. Reparations were then made to the victims of human rights abuses and families of deceased loved ones. The country has seen other youth-led protests, notably in 2011 and 2016. The events of 2011 were part of the larger Arab Spring that led to the reform of the constitution through a national referendum called by King Mohammed the Sixth. For the first time in Moroccan history, the monarch strengthened the role of the government by ceding executive power to the prime minister and parliament. The king remains a legitimate head of state, military and religious affairs, upholding the power to the point and remove ministers if necessary. What makes Gen Z 212 different is that those demonstrating say they are not tied to a political party and do not appear to have a formal structure. Misbah Hassan says, quote unquote, "We're not a political movement, we have no leader. Maybe that's why the police were arresting people, and why the government kept silent, because in their eyes we didn't follow the traditional path of organizations and political parties. But there is some disquiet about the violence. On the night of October 1st, 3 protesters died in the town of Lakia after people attempted to storm a police station. The local authorities said security forces opened fire after protesters tried to start a fire and steal weapons from the station. Then subsequently released supporting CCTV footage to disprove the emerging false narratives online. Protesters have condemned the rioting and looting that have happened in certain areas and have organized cleanup groups. They have also repeatedly called for police dialogue, but it seems they are not convinced by the Prime Minister's apparent willingness to talk. On Friday, calls began to emerge for the king to dissolve the government, and it may be a step too far. Yet the protests do not seem to be in the mood to pull back. Looking ahead to 2030, protester Ms. Balasan says that the chorus of Moroccans are excited to host the World Cup. We love football, it's in our blood, but we are missing the foundations. So let's build stadiums, but let's also build our education and health systems to take care of our people. So, according as Ms. Hassan has said, they're protesting for the right reasons. They had a lot of good reasons for protests, and they I gotta be honest, they're right, and they're trying to get the government to recognize these issues. They want to host the World Cup, that they really need to focus on these things. At the same time, the government's spending a lot of money to build these new stadiums, and this is what FIFA will do. FIFA is a very big event, and it comes in. The government has to spend a lot of money to build and improve its stadiums in order to be able to host the World Cup. And Morocco is still a young country, obviously. It's going through these growing pains of trying to address both sides of the same coin. As you can see here, in these articles, this article is also from Vanguard.com. I've read this already. That this is in the comment in the description box of both these articles are in the description box. This was October 5th, 2025. This was just 4 days ago, where people want change to happen, but of course government is a bureaucracy, so these things are not going to come very fast unless the government actually puts efforts towards making these changes happen. But this is going to take time to get done, obviously. So, and I'm just going to kind of end it with this last article here. I just saw this news. This is from Sportstar, thehindu.com. Despite the fact that Morocco is protesting, young Moroccans, the Gen Z and Morocco are protesting for better healthcare system and educational system in the country. The plan is still to go forward to host the World Cup, to host the Cup of African Nations, of the African Cup of soccer in Morocco. They have these big, wonderful plans that they have going on. They're still going to go ahead. The government's still going to go ahead and host this. And I think in that previous article, the article I read about them having the justice system inside the stadiums, because I think that they have that there so they can be able to deal with the protests, because then there's still going to be protests occurring. They still have people protesting, in outside the stadium, so they have to have the justice system inside the stadiums to deal with that occurring. So um, let's just read this article here. The Cup of Nations, Cup of African Nations president says Morocco street protests do not affect AFCON fans. So this article was written October 6, 2025. Morocco, which is building the world's biggest football stadium to co-host the Men's World Cup in 2030, has seen demonstrations this month in more than a dozen cities by young activists, both Gen Z activists. So, street protests against Morocco's government, provoked in part by spending on stadiums, will not change plans for the African Cup of Nations. The continent's top football officials said Monday they spent $5 billion to build these stadiums across their country, and obviously they can also commit some money towards building healthcare systems as well, and educational systems. And this is what people are protesting for, to change. Morocco, which is building the world's biggest football stadium to co-host the Men's World Cup in 2030, has seen demonstrations this month in more than a dozen cities by young activists. So just read that part. Morocco is Plan A, Morocco is Plan B, Morocco is Plan C. Confederation of African Football President Patrice Motsepe said at a news conference after its annual meeting, when asked about changing tournament plans, chants of stadiums are here, but where the hospitals has been heard at protests driven by online collective group called Gen Z 212, named after the country's dialing code. They are protesting that they say is a lack of opportunity, underfunded health and education systems, and were supported in social media posts by national team players, including Sofiane Amrabat and Yassine Bounou. The North African nation hosts the 4-week 24-team Cup of Nations from December 21st for the CAF, whose president was asked Monday if plans or dates could be changed. Motsepe said, quote unquote, "We are absolutely confident that we will, as CAF, cooperate, work together with the government and all the people of Morocco to host the most successful Cup of Nations in the history of this competition." Motsepe's first vice president at the CAF is Fouzi Lekja. I'm really butchering these names. Moroccan's football leader and a financial advisor to the government, which is providing some of the projected $5 billion spending on projects related to the World Cup. Morocco was picked by the CAF 2 years ago to replace Guinea as host of the 2025 tournament, and will use 9 venues, including expanding a 75,000-seat venue now called the Grand Stade des Changiers, and renovating Prince Moulay Abdullah Stadium in Rabat to 78,000 seats. Morocco is building the 115,000-seat Hassan II Stadium in Casablanca, which it hopes will stage the final of the 2030 World Cup, being co-hosted with Spain and Portugal. The 48-team tournament will start with some great games hosted by South American neighbors Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay, the original World Cup host in 1930. So, as I've said, we've come to the end of this live stream. But I just want to make the point. The people, the Moroccan people, and Gen Z and Moroccan of Morocco are protesting for valid reasons to change, for money to be sent into the healthcare system and improvements made to the educational system. And they definitely want to host the World Cup. They want to host the African Cup of Nations. This is a very important. They love football. They love it, but they had their serious problems with the healthcare system. People are dying from the healthcare system in Morocco. And in my first live stream, I've covered this, and it's quite sad to see people are dying from poor healthcare. And but these you have to remember that part of the reason why they have these problems is because I'm no expert on the history of Morocco. I've never been to Morocco. I I don't know anyone who is Moroccan, but I can clearly see that in reading these articles, they are definitely suffering from a lack of the government's prioritizing money to put money into building stadiums, and people are protesting that they want money to go towards building the healthcare system, to improving the educational systems, and they cannot get that, and the government's clamping down on people, arresting people, which is, they're arresting people because they're protesting for changes to happen, and so not only that, the government is building, as it's being reported, they're building courts literally built courts into the stadium so they can have their court sessions in the stadiums while the games are being played. That's just crazy. That's pretty crazy. The fact that they would build that kind of court system inside the stadiums to kind of fast track the process, and people are, at the same time, it's kind of a messy situation that people are dealing with, that's what's going on. Um, so there's a lot that's going on with the situation, and the protests with the Gen Z. Gen Z has a valid reason to protest. Um, let's just admit it. They have reasonable demands, that they want to happen. That will the government of Morocco make those changes? They are listening to what people are saying, and they understand what people are going through, but at the same time there's a disconnect at the same time, because those who are in power may not understand. They may not understand what people are going through, because they don't they live a different lifestyle, so they don't really see what people are going through at the same time. And on top of that, the African Cup of Nations is going to be held in Morocco this year, and they're making preparations for the World Cup in 2030. The building that as the description was for the stadium, it's 115,000 soccer stadium in Morocco, one of the biggest stadiums in the world. It's going to be probably a beautiful stadium that's being built there, but so much money is being poured into it that they're neglecting it to the point they're neglecting their own healthcare system and educational system, and people are suffering for it. Some obviously they have to address those issues, and obviously if they don't address it, more people are going to protest until changes happen. But as I read in my previous article, there are people that have commented that these things, that they say they're going to do it, but then they don't do it, and that's why people are upset. There's just this double standard. They do one thing, they don't do it. They say one thing, they do another thing, and people are fed up with it. Obviously, I'm gonna do my best to pay more attention to the situation occurring with the Gen Z protests in Morocco on the World Cup 2030 World Cup being hosted by Spain and Portugal and Morocco. I know I have been covering it, and I mentioned it before. The 2030 World Cup is going to be in Morocco, Spain, and Portugal. It's also going to be held in Argentina, Uruguay, and Paraguay. So this is a big event for six soccer nations right here. It's a big event for six soccer nations in 2030. Right now, the U.S. is going to hold the 2026 World Cup next year. And who knows what's going to happen next year when the 2026 World Cup happens. Obviously, the players have to deal with the health, the heat in the summer in the 2026 World Cup. And as I've mentioned before, in the 2026 World Cup, the players have complained about the severe heat problem that they have to deal with, and we'll have to see how it's going to affect the World Cup when it comes. Obviously, the U.S. is dealing with its own immigration problems and all, but we'll have to see what's going to happen. But that's like another live stream for another day. I'm focused on the 2030 World Cup, and so there's a lot going on. This is also kind of interesting because the article mentioned that there's protests happening in the country of that the reason why these guys are protesting in Morocco is because other people are protesting in Nepal, and the people in Nepal are protesting because of an entirely different situation. I don't know what's going on happening in Nepal, but this article is referencing that other people that they're getting inspiration from what's going on in Nepal. They're also getting inspiration to protest, in their country, and they have valid reasons for it. I can understand that. I can also understand the government and the country want to have the World Cup. It's a major event. So there has to be they have to come together and dialogue and try to find a reason. They have to come together and make changes. Obviously there has to be a dialogue there. So we'll have to see what's going to happen going forward with the 2030 World Cup and the protests. Obviously these protests have been occurring since March of this year. So it's been going on for nearly a year now. The year is nearly over. It's been going on for the past 5 months, 6 months now. So we'll have to see what's going to happen. I'm gonna have to end this live stream for today, everyone. So I hope you all enjoy a wonderful day and have a great Thursday and enjoy the beautiful weather outside, wherever you are across the world. I'll see you guys in the next live stream, and I'll definitely try to bring you more updated information on this situation with the World Cup and Morocco or protests. I'm not trying to make this is not a political thing going on. This is just coverage of what's going on over there. But I'm also going to be covering other news, of course, going with the boxing. There's been some news that's happening, basketball. I'll do my best to try to get those and other sports, of course. So stay tuned for that, and also don't be afraid to subscribe to the wrestling channel with my good friend Blue and Steel. We cover WWE wrestling. Those that link is also in the description box. So don't be afraid to subscribe to our YouTube channel there. If you like wrestling, don't be afraid to subscribe to that. And I'll see you guys in the next live stream, talking more about this news and also the other news I cover. Thank you all for listening.